First game, Maryland goes to Indiana. Indiana, they're 6.5 point favorites, by the way. If you were to tell me that before this season, I would have thought you were out of your mind right now. But guess what? Indiana's healthy. They got a great coaching staff. And you know what? They maybe hit on some of their transfer portal skill players. They maybe have done that. Their defense has also looked really good as well. However, their schedule has been a little bit iffy up until this point, right? They dominate UCLA, which we saw give LSU a little bit of struggles at times. But UCLA, to us, to this show, to me and CD, is a bad football team. Okay. Maryland, on the other hand, an absolute just stinger of a loss to Michigan State when you had Aiden Childs just making play after play late in the game. You miss a field goal. I mean, Maryland should have probably won and covered that game, but they ended up losing straight up. And yeah, so we're looking at this line right here. And I mean, Indiana's been firing on all cylinders, just firing on all cylinders. That's a team that probably should be ranked in the top 25, if you ask me, but they're not at this point. And we got a 6.5 point spread. CD, what are you looking at for this game?
Yeah, this one's really interesting. Obviously, I think the first where I kind of turn my eyes are to the quarterback position here. Obviously, the quarterback's super important position, but these two quarterbacks, I think a lot of question marks were coming in for different reasons for these programs. Obviously, Billy Edwards, we were not fans of Billy Edwards. Okay, in the preseason, he has outdone his my expectation of him, and I think yours as well.
Yeah.
In terms of they lost the Michigan State game, that was not his fault. He went over, and to be honest, he played really well against Aiden Childs. He played really well against Virginia and Calandria. And Indiana, obviously, Curtis Rourke, it's been maybe a couple years since he's been playing high level football and healthy, and he's doing both right now. And obviously, you're seeing the results happen for that Indiana offense, and obviously a 4-0 start to the season. But you mentioned that Maryland little 2 game stretch there with Michigan State and Virginia. They kind of ran into two sides of two really frisky quarterbacks, right? So obviously Aiden Childs is super frisky, very up and down. When his highs are high, though, he is really, really good. And we saw that late in the game against Maryland. Then we saw, Calandra kind of struggle in that second half, for Virginia. So what are we going to get? Right. I think Curtis Work, I do think he's going to be a lot more consistent than both of them. I do think he'll be more consistent than Billy Edwards. That's why I like Indiana in this game. I like them at home. I think they're going to run the ball well as well. They kind of got a trio of backs, but really just two guys there, Ellison and Lawton, that are running the ball very, very well. And I think if you establish a run, Indiana, by the way, has a really underrated group of receivers too, and weapons surrounding Curtis Work. Obviously, Miles Price, Miles Cross, Elijah Sarrett, Omar Cooper, right, just to name a couple. And not even yeah, it's been pretty nice to see. Obviously, Mike Shanahan, no relation to the Mike Shanahan, right? But yeah, I give me Indiana and the points. I'll lay them at home. I think this is where we find out if Indiana, like how good they really are. And obviously, Maryland is not this elite team in the Big Ten, but these are the games that Kirk Sinai was brought in to win. If you want to make a bowl game at Indiana, you have to beat Maryland. Teams like Maryland at home, especially when you're favored by just about a touchdown to do so.
I'm gonna fade you. I'm taking Maryland with the points. I do think Indiana's gonna win though. All right. So I'll take Indiana to win, but I'm gonna take Maryland to cover. And here's my reasoning here. I mean, look, Indiana's taking care of the football and taking care of Curtis Work a lot. They are top 10 in they've thrown zero interceptions. They've lost zero fumbles. They've only given up 3 sacks all year. I just don't think you faced a good front seven like we're seeing with Maryland here. Maryland, they forced 6 interceptions. That's eighth in the country. They forced 4 fumbles, which is 10th in the country. So the top 10 in turnovers, right, created. And they've also had 7 sacks on the year. I now pretty penalized team, Maryland. Like they have to clean up their stuff, but so is Indiana sneakily. Indiana is probably a bottom 40 team in terms of penalty yards per game. So if Indiana doesn't clean it up, and look, it hasn't cost them, right? Because they've played UCLA, FIU, Western Illinois, Charlotte. Like it hasn't really caught up to them yet, right? But when I'm looking at these margins, what is Curtis Rourke going to do against a legitimate Big Ten? Like Maryland's defense is pretty solid. Okay, I know
Yeah.
through the air they've been pretty susceptible to some damage, against Aiden Childs, uh, in particular. But that was more so late in the game. Look, I think Maryland could win this game, And but if Indiana goes out there and beats Maryland by 2 touchdowns, I'm ready to say that, okay, wow. So Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska are pretty legit. That would be the summary that I'd get. Okay, that's your second tier of the Big Ten. As we because every year, your tier one looks like in the Big Ten, right? But what does that tier two look like in the Big Ten? And then what does your bottom of the Big Ten look like? Um, I mean, if Maryland loses this game, I'm not going to hold it against them because Indiana's looked fantastic. But I'm looking for Indiana. I'm looking for Curtis Ward to turn the ball over, which, historically he's done an okay job taking care of the football, but at times he's been susceptible to throwing costly interceptions. And Maryland's good at capitalizing on them, has as we've seen these first 4 games. So yeah, I'm once again taking Maryland. I don't know if I'm just trying to my preseason inclination was that they were going to be pretty decent this year, and I'm not ready to let go of that quite yet. But that's what it's going to be for me. I'm going to take Maryland plus 6.5. I mean,
I do think it does help that it sounds like Donovan McCulley is getting more healthy. Obviously, he got hurt in week one there, and he could be a guy he is a guy that is a legit mismatch, right? 6'5", just about. And the reason what gives me faith about Indiana and taking them is I think even if they start out slow, I still feel good about them to recover. On the other hand, Maryland, I do think like Roman Hemby, first of all, very good football player. He has to get going and going early. If you start getting to a negative game script, right, that could be where some of the stuff kind of falls away from you, right? And that would be the worrisome, obviously, for Maryland, putting too much on Billy Edwards to make him obviously make a tough mistake on the road there. And yeah. But listen, Ty Felton, good football player for Maryland. Caden Prather, good football player. Like those guys, they can make plays too, but wow, it's kind of exciting. Yeah, I love getting to preview these guys. I don't think we can talk a
like
ton
like
about them
how good
nationally,
though
but
is Indiana's like how good are they? I know they got a ton of JMU transfers on that defensive side, and we knew that they were going to be better. But I mean, Indiana right now is playing their seventh in points per game allowed, third in total yards per game allowed, seventh in first downs allowed per game, top 10 pass defense, top 10 rush defense in every metric, only allowing 3.7 yards per play as defense, only 29.2% of third down conversions they're allowing. Like this defense has been looking unreal. But how good is it going to be when you play against an offense that maybe isn't as stagnant? Offense that's averaging 308 yards passing per game, which I did not expect from Billy Edwards coming into this season. A team that's averaging over 50% on third down. What happens when you're not able to get off the field the way that you have been against these other terrible teams that you've played against? So that's something to consider. Something to consider. So I'll take the points with Maryland. I know we're picking at 6.5. There's a lot of sevens out there. I feel a lot better picking out a 7, but for the show, I mean, we can't push. I mean, that's stupid, right? That's
yeah,
so
no.
stupid.